Let us begin, not with the obvious, but with the forgotten. The emptiness that resides in the spaces where no one is looking. It is not loneliness that one must first address, for it is not the condition, but the cause that defines the soul. There exists a strange irony in our age. We are more connected than ever before. The endless devices, the constant hum of communication. Yet, paradoxically, we find ourselves more alone, more isolated from the very essence of what it means to truly connect with one another. This is the great dissonance of our time. The more we are urged to reach out, the more we fall inward, disconnected from our own souls and from each other. Ask yourself this: what is the difference between a room full of people and being in solitude? The answer lies not in the number of bodies that fill the space, but in the quality of communion that exists between them. It is possible to be surrounded by multitudes, to hear the laughter, to see the movement of life all around you, and yet, in the deepest recesses of your being, to feel utterly alone. This, indeed, is the cruelest of tortures. A denial of self, a surrender to the mindless pull of the crowd. Loneliness is not simply a matter of physical isolation. No, it is far deeper than that. It is the disconnection between the self and the other. The distance between your inner world and the world around you that breeds this affliction, this most agonizing of conditions. You see, we have been raised not to seek meaningful union, but to beg for validation. We are taught that our worth lies in the fleeting attention of others, in the shallow exchanges that dance in and out of our lives like brief flashes of light. We have been conditioned to believe that connection, this surface-level interaction, is what will rescue us from the abyss. This belief, this falsehood, binds us to the very thing that keeps us from liberation. It drives us into the arms of the crowd, for we have been told that our survival depends upon the company of others. We fear the depths of ourselves, the vastness of the solitude that our inner world demands. To confront oneself is to acknowledge the emptiness within, an emptiness that refuses to be filled by the superficial gestures of social life. And so we cling desperately to the noise, to the distractions, to the false promises of connection that echo through the digital void, knowing deep down that the more we surround ourselves with others, the further we move from the truth of our being. What then is the answer? How does one escape this paradox, this cruel trick that existence has played upon us? How do we break free from the chains of constant interaction and find the stillness that lies beyond? It begins, perhaps, with a fundamental redefinition of what it means to be alone. To be alone is not to be abandoned. To be alone is not to be forsaken. No, to be alone is to encounter oneself. It is to face the silent abyss within and to discover that in that silence, one can come to know their truest nature. The fear of solitude arises not from a lack of company, but from the terror of confronting the unknown depths within ourselves. And so, we distract ourselves, we turn our attention outward, hoping to escape the awareness of our own emptiness. But the more we seek to fill this void with others, the more we fall further from the truth of who we are. True connection can only be born from an understanding of the self. It is only when we learn to be truly alone, to stand before our own reflection without fear, that we can hope to connect with others in a meaningful way. For the connection we seek outside of ourselves is merely a reflection of the connection we must first establish within. It is in the depths of solitude that one discovers their own worth, not through the validation of others, but through the encounter with their own soul. And in that moment of self-discovery, one is free, not from loneliness, but from the chains of dependence upon others for validation. Only then can we truly experience the communion we so desperately seek. But here lies the most terrible truth. This journey inward is a lonely one. It requires an unbearable solitude, not the loneliness of the crowd, but the painful, profound solitude of the self. And this solitude is not something to be feared, for it is only through embracing it fully that one can hope to find the true connection they seek. And so, in this modern age, where we are surrounded by distractions and superficial connections, we must ask ourselves, are we truly seeking others, or are we running from the terrifying vastness of our own inner landscape? To know oneself is to risk the agony of isolation, to face the abyss, and perhaps to fall into it. But it is also the only path to true connection. True connection is born not from the noise of society, but from the profound silence that we encounter when we dare to look within. Only in the stillness of the self can we hear the deeper currents of existence. Only in solitude, in that confrontation with our own being, can we come to know what it means to truly connect with others. For it is not the number of people around us that defines the quality of our relationships, but the depth of our own connection to ourselves. Only through this connection can we begin to offer something real to others. Only then can we begin to break free from the crippling loneliness that modern society has bestowed upon us. Loneliness, then, is not an affliction to be cured by the presence of others. It is not something that can be solved by the endless flow of communication that clutters our lives. No, loneliness is a reflection of a deeper ailment, the loss of connection to the self. And it is only by rediscovering that connection, by embracing the solitude that comes with knowing oneself, that we can hope to overcome it. But the question remains, are we willing to make this journey? Are we prepared to face the loneliness that comes with seeking the truth of our own being? For in doing so, we risk all that we have known. We risk the safety of the crowd, the comfort of the familiar, but we also gain something far greater, the freedom to exist as we truly are, not as we are molded by the expectations of others. In a world that demands connection, that urges us to be seen, to be known, we must ask ourselves, who are we when the noise fades away? Who are we when the distractions are stripped away and we stand alone, facing only ourselves? The answer, I believe, lies not in the search for others, but in the search for the self. Only when we find the courage to stand alone, to be truly alone, can we hope to find the connection we so desperately seek. And so we continue not as we were, but as we must become. The mistake, the greatest mistake, is in believing that we are ever truly alone in our solitude. For solitude is not emptiness. It is the primal force of the self, the great work of the soul to reconnect with its true essence. The crowd, the false connections, only serve to obscure this, to fill the void with superficial noise. If we are to understand loneliness, we must first strip away the illusion of connection. It is an illusion most dear to us, for it feeds the shallowest part of our being, the part that seeks comfort in numbers, that desires to be seen, to be heard, to be validated. It is not true connection we seek, but the reflection of ourselves in the eyes of another. But consider this. What is the true nature of connection? It is not found in the endless exchange of words, the constant chatter that fills the spaces where silence once reigned. True connection is found only when two souls meet, not through proximity or social rituals, but through a profound recognition of one another. This is the kind of communion that transcends all others, the kind that does not require the company of many, but only the presence of one, fully seen, fully understood, and fully respected. There are those who have not known the depth of this communion, and they walk through life searching in vain, trying to grasp at the intangible, the fleeting. They misunderstand the very nature of human existence, as though it were a series of obligations to be fulfilled, relationships to be managed, appearances to be kept. Yet, even in the midst of all this, there remains the gnawing emptiness, the inability to touch the deeper parts of one's own being. The question arises, why do we seek connection? And perhaps more importantly, why do we fear solitude? Why do we feel the need to surround ourselves with others, even if they are strangers to us, even if they fail to see the essence of who we are? The answer, my friend, is that we have been conditioned, taught to fear the abyss of the self. The darkness, the silence, the void that lies within us is not a place of peace for most, but of terror. And yet, it is in this very terror that true freedom resides. We are terrified of facing the abyss, the unknown parts of our own soul, because we have not learned to embrace them. We have been taught to reject them, to bury them beneath the weight of distractions, of noise, of external expectations. But the truth is this: in those moments when we are alone, when the world falls silent, we stand face to face with our true nature. We are forced to confront the parts of ourselves we would rather not see. And it is only in that confrontation that we can begin to understand who we truly are. The idea of loneliness is often misunderstood. It is not a condition to be avoided, but an experience to be embraced. For in this loneliness, in the absence of others, we find ourselves. The fear of this loneliness is the fear of the unknown, the fear of encountering a self that we have long neglected. But only by turning inward, by confronting our fears, can we begin the long journey towards self-understanding. It is not easy. There is nothing simple about confronting the self. The process is painful, for it requires us to relinquish the false ideas we have held about who we are, to give up the masks that have allowed us to navigate a world that is always shifting, always changing. But the price of this relinquishment is great freedom. To know oneself is the greatest liberation. And from that place of deep self-awareness, we can finally begin to relate to others in a way that is authentic, not out of fear, not out of need, but out of choice. In our solitude, we have the opportunity to let go of these fears. We are invited, in silence, to create the space necessary for growth, for reflection. It is in solitude that we can strip away the layers of pretense that bind us to the expectations of others. And yet, even in this silence, we must be cautious. For the silence, if left unchecked, can become a cage of its own, a place where the soul grows stagnant. This is why there is a fine line between solitude and isolation. While solitude can lead to self-realization and clarity, isolation can trap us in a never-ending cycle of despair. The difference lies in our attitude toward our own inner world. To be isolated is to retreat in fear, to shut oneself off from the world out of a sense of inadequacy or hopelessness. But solitude, true solitude, is the conscious choice to engage with the self in its raw, unrefined state. It is the willingness to enter the void, to face the darkness, knowing that beyond it lies the possibility of transformation. The problem of modernity is not that we are surrounded by too many people, but that we are surrounded by people who do not see us. They look, but they do not understand. They hear, but they do not listen. We have become a society of superficial connections, of endless exchanges that serve no true purpose. And in the midst of this, we find ourselves drifting further and further from our own essence, trying desperately to fit into a world that does not allow us to be fully ourselves. The question, then, is not how to escape this world of false connections, but how to reclaim our authenticity within it. It is not enough to simply withdraw into solitude, to disconnect entirely from the world. This is another form of denial, another escape from the true work of the soul. No, what we must learn is how to be present in the world without losing ourselves. We must learn to navigate the external world, not with fear, but with awareness, with clarity. We must begin to value true communion over mere company. We must seek out those who understand us not because they mirror our desires, but because they recognize the depth of our soul. True connection is rare, but it is worth striving for. And it is only in this connection, in the meeting of souls, that we can begin to heal the wounds of our loneliness. Loneliness is not a curse, it is an invitation. It is an invitation to understand the depths of who we are, to confront the parts of ourselves we have long ignored, to embrace the silence within. It is the path to a deeper connection, not only with others but with ourselves.